Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Messages. This is Reverend Sydney Finn, as always, and we are going to be talking about confidence, which is what you guys voted for on Instagram. So I guess I consider myself to have a different view on confidence than I think the majority of people, or at least this is just what I've heard from other people talk about confidence. So hopefully you get some value out of this, and this can clear some things up for you if you're needing some support with this area, because I know this is a tough spot for a lot of people. Okay, so first, let's go over a definition of confidence. And I was a little uncertain of what the definition would be, but I think this explains it really well. So I'm going to break the definition down for you. Okay, confidence is a state of being certain either that a hypothesis or prediction is correct or that a chosen course of action is the best or most effective. So before I unpack all of that, I really want to make the distinction between confidence and self-esteem because that is going to make a big difference in this discussion. So let me go over the self-esteem definition so we can split them apart. Okay, so here's the definition for self-esteem. Self-esteem is an individual's subjective evaluation of their own worth. Self-esteem encompasses beliefs about oneself. For example, I am unloved, I am worthy, as well as emotional states such as triumph, despair, pride, and shame. So here's the main thing that we want to distinguish between self-esteem and confidence. So self-esteem is something that originated when you were super young. So all of the programming that your parents gave you is what ultimately evolved into your self-esteem as an adult. And then you've, assuming you're doing healing work or repairing or trying to adjust your mindset, that's where you are repairing and restructuring your self-esteem. So those are the beliefs about yourself, okay? Confidence is actually much more simple. I think self-esteem is very challenging to evolve out of because it takes a lot of healing work, especially when those wounds are really old, right? So you guys know I have wounds from infancy, in utero, infancy, all of the really old wounds. And so those get really ingrained into your brain very deeply. And so confidence is something that you can actually cultivate much faster and much easier than self-esteem. So I'm not saying that self-esteem is something that can't be modified. Of course it can. It just takes a lot more emotional work in order to repair that part of yourself. And your self-esteem in one area of your life is going to be completely different than other areas of your life. Like if your parents just absolutely showered you in adoration around your academic performance, but when it comes to affection and things like that, they starved you of love, you're going to have a different experience in academia and your self-esteem in that area compared to like romantic relationships, for example. So that's more of how self-esteem plays out. Confidence is just you believing that you're capable of doing something. That's literally all it is. So you can have shit self-esteem in certain areas, or you can have wonky self-esteem, but build confidence really quickly around your ability to do something. So this is the good news about confidence, is it actually isn't quite as emotional as self-esteem. And it's not something that your parents really give to you. Like I know my parents did not give me my confidence, and the clients that I work with, it's like their parents didn't actually give them any confidence. They gave them self-esteem. So that's when you're thinking about self-esteem versus confidence, the beliefs and all of the programs about yourself, that is what your parents told you, all of those stories and narratives and what becomes your internal dialogue. That's all mom and dad or caretaker, whoever took care of you, okay? Confidence is just a skill that you develop over time in trusting your own capabilities that you can do something. Now, I do want to add one kind of modification to what I was saying about your parents don't impact your confidence directly. And what I mean by this is your parents can create opportunities for you to build confidence, but they can't actually instill confidence in you. They can only instill self-esteem. So the ironic thing about my upbringing is that I had a ton of time and space and opportunities to build confidence because my parents were neglectful. This is probably counterintuitive, but let me unpack my own confidence development over time, because I know that my confidence, like by the time I was 16, 17, I mean, my confidence in myself was through the roof. Like, it was unreal how much confidence I had in myself, and that I still do large part in adulthood. So when it comes to where I would evaluate myself when it comes to confidence, I'm very, very high on that end of the spectrum. And here's why. So when I was little, right, when I was, say, 3 or 4, let's say I wanted a bowl of cereal. My dad, of course, this is because he's neglectful. This isn't out of the goodness of his heart, but he wanted me to get it myself. And so he would set everything up, right? He'd get the box of cereal, he would get the bowl, he would get the milk, the huge gallon of milk, and make me do it myself. Now, some of you are probably like, oh my God, I can't believe he would do that. Of course, he's risking me making a mess. But ultimately, this was me having the opportunity to do something that was hard for me at that time. So because I'm able at 4 years old to pour myself a bowl of cereal, that's like a small way that confidence was developed, because it was simply, I'm doing something hard. And that's all confidence is you're just doing something hard. It's just a matter of, I'm getting outside of my comfort zone. I'm doing something I've never done before. So even though my dad gave me the opportunity to do it myself, it was an opportunity to build confidence. So he's not, the self-esteem part would be him talking me up about how great I am at doing it, right? How great I am at pouring a bowl of cereal. That's the self-esteem element. But just the opportunity for me to go and do the hard thing was where there was, a fleck of confidence that was built each time he let me do that myself, or every time someone let me do something more challenging. Now, as I got older, because I was so neglected, right? Don't do that to your kids, first of all. But because there was such an extreme level of neglect, it just turned into, I had to take on a lot of responsibility to do pretty much everything that needed to be done around a house. And that also was taking initiative in all of the things that I wanted to get done, because I knew nobody else would take care of it for me. And so even though those opportunities started coming up more and more way too young, right? Around 9, 10 years old, I was doing way too much shit for myself. More stuff than any child should ever do for themselves. And so that was kind of where I was getting massive amounts of confidence in a very short amount of time, even though it was a fucked up situation. But then by the time I was 12, 13, 14, I started taking bigger risks, making bigger decisions for myself. And then I started, moving out of the house, deciding where I was going to live, managing my own money by that age. And so this is just something where I was shoved out of the nest so quickly that it boosted my confidence, because now I'm having to do hard shit every day. Like, there's no free pass. I just have to get this done. I have to make it happen. So then we get to, 16, 17, 18. I've already done freelance work because I've tried to rake in cash prior to that to be somewhat independent on my own. And so then by the time I got to that age, it's like I had already been through so many challenging things, and I had already done so much hard stuff that by the time I had to get a job and pay rent, it was a piece of cake. Like, it was not even a second thought, because my confidence had already been so well built and I had to do so many challenging things over time that that's the only reason why my confidence was as high as it was. Now, the other bit of good news about this is that, one, it's an easy skill to build. Honestly, I think that confidence is probably one of the main things that everybody should be working on, because I think it grows so fast. Like, you can do one challenging thing and feel a boost of confidence when you complete it. And it builds that muscle again and again and again. And so, of course, not everyone is going to be taking the types of risks that I would take, right? But again, the amount of confidence that you have and the amount of risk that you're willing to assume for yourself, I consider them to be pretty congruent. So the more my confidence grew, the more risk I was willing to take in my personal life, with my career, with all of the decisions that I had. So I had all this confidence, and then by the time I was in college and I didn't like a job, I would just say, fuck you, I'm out, knowing that I was going to make the money. That was confidence. That wasn't anything other than just pure trust in myself, which is the nice thing. It's like, you don't need external validation to build confidence. You don't need mommy and daddy to build confidence. You don't need a therapist to build confidence. That's what's so awesome about it. And also, I think there are a lot of things within your own life, and the exception here is if you've been so sheltered and so pampered and so privileged. Like, if you haven't had any adversity at all, you're actually at a deficit in this area. Because if you've been floating on a pillow your entire life and your parents take care of everything for you, you don't really grow teeth when you're in that state. And so your confidence in your own ability to do things is going to be much lower. And the reason for this is exactly what I explained before, but it's the inverse. You know, I was neglected, therefore I had to trust myself to get shit done. It built confidence very, very quickly. And then by the time, you know, I was an adult, everything felt like a piece of cake. But if you've been pampered, or if you've been overly supported, I would say, if you've been given too much, then your trust in yourself, like your own ability to make things happen, is going to feel much more unstable. And so what might seem like a very small risk to me, like leaving a job feels like a very small risk to me, but to you it might feel like absolutely panic-inducing. This idea of, oh my God, can I get another job? Can I actually make this happen? Will I be okay? Right? So the risk perception is going to be night and day. And it's not based on anything other than your confidence level. That's why confidence is so, so, so important for a lot of people. The other thing that you want to keep in mind is that your brain is going to try to prevent you from developing this skill, because your brain wants to stay comfortable. It doesn't want to do hard shit. It doesn't want to challenge itself. It certainly doesn't want to grow, right? Like, we crave those things on a soul level, but the brain is designed to avoid pain. So in the attempt of avoiding pain and trying to stay comfortable, you avoid all of the activities that are going to build your confidence. And this is the type of stuff that really leads to stagnation, depression, you know, the type of stuff that makes you feel emotionally immobilized in many ways. So the thing is, your brain is probably going to, the majority of the time, it's going to be keeping you in a nice, comfortable place. But then when your soul is trying to grow and you're trying to develop, that's where the discrepancy comes into place. When you're seeing, I want more, but your brain is like, no, stay comfortable. And that's the primal part of yourself. That's the, you know, I don't want to get uncomfortable. I don't want to experience pain. I don't want to get outside of my comfort zone. And so you're kind of at odds with, am I ready to grow? My spirit is saying yes, and my brain is saying no. And so that's really where confidence comes into play. And I think that that's one thing that people really miss, is it's like confidence is the little thing in between where you are now and what you desire. Is just confidence in yourself to make it happen. Shove manifestation aside for 2 seconds and really just consider, how you feel about yourself achieving things or being capable. Now, I don't even want you to really focus on the outcome, but just focusing on something small, like how do you feel about your own ability to do that thing? And to those of you who are saying, no way, I don't feel like I can make that happen, the issue is not actually capability. A lot of the time, it's just you haven't had enough exposure to starting and completing something challenging and then getting the feedback of you achieved that thing in order to build data to prove to yourself that you actually are capable. So sometimes it's like if you've just been dealt a shit hand, but there hasn't been a lot of empowerment or a lot of moves that have been made by you in order to change circumstances, right? If you're just kind of like a leaf blowing in the wind, that's something that's not going to build confidence. If you kind of feel like life is what's carrying you and you're not carrying anything, if you haven't experienced any, I would say intentional challenges, right? Not challenges that life presents. I'm not talking about the shit you have to deal with because of karma or life or family. I'm talking about what is something that you've picked for yourself and said, this is this thing that I want, or this is this project, or this is this goal that I have. It's hard, but I'm going to actively decide that that is where I'm going to go and then doing the damn thing. That's actually where confidence comes into play as an adult. I gave you my example with confidence, but a lot of that was developed in childhood. So for adults, it's kind of like, don't look at life's challenges. Look at what challenges you actually are excited to take on. And those are the things that are going to really help you build confidence. So I know a lot of you were talking, or you submitted questions that said something to the effect of like, how do you build it? How do you cultivate it? Etc., etc. So the main thing that is going to help you build confidence is doing something that you aren't 100% sure you can do, or doing something that is actually outside of your skill level that you know you can't do, but trying and doing something hard. This could be a hobby. Like, pick something that you actually suck at. And that's what you want to start with, is something that you know you're not good at, but it's a skill that can be built. Okay, I'm about to talk about exercise as a way to build confidence. So let me point out a disclaimer here. So first of all, if you deal with an eating disorder, please use your common sense. Know yourself, right? Take this information for whatever it is. But I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, of course, I understand that people can become obsessive and over-exercise, blah, 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 blah. Yes. So if you struggle with that, then you need to use your own discernment. You need to make your own decisions, and you need to be clear on what's good for you. However, the one thing that I do want to bring up is that, yes, there's going to be the group of people who end up with a distorted view of what I'm about to say. And that is your thing to manage and work through, right? That's a whole other can of worms. However, I really disagree with the idea that we should not have these conversations, or that we should not consider exercise and being conscious about how we're fueling our bodies. I don't believe that going unconscious is the solution. And there's this really weird culture right now around like basically demonizing anyone who discusses diet, nutrition, and exercise. And I just want you to know where I stand on all of that. I completely disagree with demonizing, prioritizing your health and well-being. So yeah, I understand there's a lot of people who are rah, don't focus on anything health related. You're being brainwashed by people who want your money. I don't agree with that at all, but I understand there's a lot of people who get on their soapbox about it. But in reality, if we're looking at the actual numbers, let's be clear. the number of people who are dealing with an eating disorder is vastly smaller than the number of people who actually do need to manage their health and pay more attention to how they're treating their body on just a very practical level and taking better care of themselves and being mindful in that area. That's the vast majority. If we're talking about numbers, way more people need to be exercising and paying attention to what they're fueling their body with than people who are struggling with eating disorders. So I just wanted to let you all know, think for yourselves, use your own discretion, figure out what's right for you, figure out which end of the spectrum you're on, okay? So act according to what's best for you. But exercise is a great example, so let's get into it. It builds confidence so profoundly quickly. Like it's beyond. Every time you go in and you lift something heavier, or you get another day of exercise done, or you do something that's challenging, but you keep pushing yourself. So this is why people talk about exercise as being a confidence builder. It has nothing to do with the results you're getting or what happens to your body. It has nothing to do with the side effects of what your body does to transform as a result. It's a matter of, I went into something that I either sucked at, or I couldn't lift very heavy, or I couldn't do very many reps, or it, was only a couple minutes before I felt winded and out of breath, and now I can do more and more and more. And it's the compounding of seeing yourself improve and get better at something over time that's really empowering for a lot of people. That alone is really valuable, regardless of any of the other stuff. And it doesn't matter what it is. If you want something low impact, it can be stretching, it can be, walking around, simply showing up for yourself in that way each time. But the whole point of confidence is you want it to be something that gets increasingly more challenging over time so that you can continue to push yourself. And that's where exercise is great, because you can constantly challenge your body in different ways. So I think that's a great place to start, is just with exercise that you enjoy, because it is a big deal. It makes a big difference. There's countless studies on what it does to your mental health and what it does for your body and everything else. So don't underestimate that, because it's a big confidence booster for all of the reasons I just explained. And it gives you a lot of the chemicals that you would ideally want to have more of. Oh, another thing that I should mention here is that make sure it's something you actually want to do. Right? Because it's something that you have to cultivate within yourself. It's something that you have to decide you want to do. So it's like if you hate running and you say, I'm going to run a marathon, that's probably not a good way to build confidence, just because it's like you're going to be aiming at something that simply doesn't feel good. So consider, what is it that you actually want that feels challenging? And whatever that may be is something that's worth pursuing. Same thing with hobbies. Like, don't just pick a hobby out of thin air. It's like, pick something you're legitimately interested in, but that's a skill that you need to build. Like something you have to actually prove to yourself, oh, I can do this. I am capable. Let's say you're trying to build confidence in your dating life. Let's say maybe it's interacting with people that you would consider to be potential partners, right? That's actually something where you can practice in a bunch of different ways. It might just be the way that you communicate, or how open you are, or how long you extend a conversation. If you cut conversation short, what if you ask the other person an additional follow-up question, push yourself a little bit, make a little bit more eye contact? Or, if you're really, really ballsy, give your number out, even if you're anticipating rejection. It's one of those things where it's not about the result. It's simply about the challenge. It's just a matter of challenging yourself and pushing yourself, and then saying, oh my God, I actually did it successfully, and my life did not go down in flames. Because that's what your brain is going to be communicating to you, is you are going to die if you challenge me. That's what the brain is going to try to tell you. And so you kind of have to navigate against that. And so that's another way that you can build in particular areas. It's about small incremental challenges over time is what really builds confidence. Or, doing big stuff and then having it work out is also a way to build confidence. But if that's too scary, if you feel like you're going to go into fight or flight, or if you feel like you're going to go into absolute scarcity, then maybe don't start with those things. So you can do little or big things. It really doesn't matter. It's just about incrementally challenging yourself more and more over time and getting more exposure to that. I'm trying to think of other examples, but I think it's pretty straightforward. I just think, like I said, I brought up exercise because I just think it's so cut and dry. It's so easy to say, oh, this is another way I could challenge myself. I know I can't do this right now, but I know I can get there. So it's a very black and white way to measure your progress and build confidence. But you could say in academia, taking a challenging class and getting through it, that's a way to build confidence if you're in that arena right now. Making short commitments to yourself. You could make like a 30-day commitment to doing something more challenging. I'm not big on short-sighted things like that, but it's a way, if you really like that, if there's just like one thing that you want to do every day for 30 days, if you like things like that and it helps you build confidence and it pushes you to continue to show up and push yourself beyond your comfort zone, then, try it out. I've seen people do stuff like wearing bright red lipstick every day for a month. Who knows? Who knows what that could do? I know that would definitely push my confidence, having to wear red lipstick every day, because I never wear that shade. I never wear red lipstick, and it would mortify me to go out in public with that shade of lipstick on. But it's infinite. Like, the ways that you can push yourself are infinite. So just think about, what do I want? Like, what's the next thing that I'm interested in doing? And then how can I challenge myself in that area in a small way, just to start gaining some confidence and then letting that compound over time. Okay, let's go into the Q&A. So here is another question. Does faking it till you make it really work for this? I don't think that faking it is necessary in order to build confidence. You can, but it's just that you don't want to put yourself in a position where it would blow up in your face, right? So if you go into like a networking event, completely faking what industry you're in, right? If you're completely lying about what you do for work and someone's like, oh, I'm in that field too, and they ask you a question and you start clamming up, it might prevent you from taking that risk again. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where faking it is something that is so high risk that it is something that could end up resulting in you not wanting to make another attempt. That's the main thing that you want to keep in mind. But in terms of, can you pump yourself up just enough to like get the thing done and then prove to yourself that you can do it? I see nothing wrong with that. It's more about, you can fake it for yourself, right? Like, just, I'm going to go in and just assume that I'm going to crush it, assume that I'm going to blow it out of the water, like trying to build up as much inflated confidence as possible. And then, going into it with that mindset. I've had to do that for stuff like with public speaking. Like, I had to give this big, I was speaking in front of like 200 people, and I had to present this big project that I had put blood, sweat, and tears into. And so I went in there like assuming I was going to absolutely knock it out of the park, even though, of course, 2 days prior, I'm having a meltdown about it. But I went in just to go get the thing done. I faked it, and it turned out okay. No, I didn't get everything I wanted. No, I didn't knock it out of the park. No, none of that happened. But I got through it. It turned out okay. Like, I made the presentation. So if faking it, you just have to use it strategically. You have to know, will just pumping my mindset up enough? Will having just insane self-talk be enough in order to carry me through this? And it can be helpful, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary. Like, you also don't want to fake it in a way that would hurt you, right? You shouldn't fake your confidence level with exercise and then throw your back out because you're trying to lift too heavy. You don't want to do that. So you have to be very, very mindful of where faking it will help you and where faking it will harm you. So just use your discretion for what that really makes sense for, and then that is going to help you fake it appropriately. How can you generate authentic self-confidence for yourself? I think I touched on that enough already. It's just like it is exposure to challenging things over and over and over again. So anytime you're presented with a challenge, it's like a massive opportunity to develop confidence, whether it be like getting through something personally and like seeing the situation through, or something you're actively deciding to do yourself. Both of those will generate confidence within yourself. I think that people overcomplicate confidence, and I don't think it needs to be. Remember, confidence is simply trusting yourself in your ability to get shit done and to make things happen and to make your desires happen, that you can actually do it. That's literally all confidence is. So the more you see things through on your watch, the more confidence you're going to build. Okay, what is the best way to heal poor self-image from eating disorders and your dad calling you fat as a kid? Okay, full transparency on this, I don't have a ton of experience with kind of the mental dialogue of eating disorders, so I don't do a ton of work with it, but here is what I would say in terms of repairing it. First of all, this is something that happened as a child. So okay, as a child, that is something that I was told. When you're a child, you have a body that is not fully developed. Your hormones are not fully developed. Your skeletal system is not fully developed. It's all of these underdeveloped parts of you, right? You don't even know what you're really going to look like when you're a child. And so as far as the way you can view that for yourself, right? Because there's distorted thinking that emerges from being told and having that crushing self-esteem as a result of thoughts that you believed were true. When you're a child, your crown is really permeable. And so everything that you are told, you just adopt as true. I just believe it's true. Santa Claus is going to bring you gifts. Boom, believe it is true. And so there's a few things that you can do. One is know that just because that information got into your crown does not make it true. So in large part, there needs to be a dismantling and kind of a breaking down of what your truth ultimately is, right? That's something that shifts over time. And also understanding in terms of your physical form, like what is actually happening. Those types of comments were made at a completely different state, right? So we already know if you're calling a young child fat and you are the parent. One, if you're legitimately in like a morbidly obese family where you are in charge of food decisions, then it's the parent's fault, always. If that's actually going on, if we're talking about real health risks, legitimate issues, okay? And because I know you, I don't think that's what's happening at all. And the second piece is that any parent who is going to go out of their way to say something that is going to inflict harm, even the dumbest people know that calling someone fat is going to inflict harm. especially a child, okay? So if someone is going out of their way to say that, then you know they're extraordinarily wounded, they're particularly toxic, and they're operating from a place of unconsciousness. So I don't know, I don't know how much this is going to stick with that part of yourself, but I think one thing that if you go back into those memories or if you're processing more, you can remind yourself, like, I don't actually want to buy in to anyone who's unconscious, toxic, and wounded. Like, I don't actually have any interest in believing what those people have to say. It's just that when we're little, we have super permeable crowns, and so it's easy to have other people project their truth onto us and have us believe it. And so the more separation you can give yourself from what that comment actually was, which was pure unconsciousness, right? You can actually reflect that back to your inner child. So part of the dialogue piece that I would say could be really helpful is, you know, the vicious thought cycle that you already have about it. And so the more you kind of separate that part of yourself, because that's not you, it's simply just mental chatter that's been implanted in your mind. It's just a seed that was planted that's now festering, okay? That's legitimately all it is. And we don't need to overcomplicate it. And so what you can kind of do is separate that part of yourself and then just understand and kind of have a dialogue with yourself about, like, that is coming from a toxic place that actually isn't mine. That's not even my information. I've just adopted it as my information because I didn't have any other ways of discerning for myself. So basically, what you kind of want to aim at is, how can I not buy in? We just want to be skeptical with the vicious thought cycle because it's coming from a toxic place outside of yourself that was just planted there. So the more you can kind of work on teasing it apart and then reminding yourself and reminding the little part of yourself that was originally hurt by that comment or those comments, however long that was going on, is just remembering that the comments were lies and projections from your father. That's the main thing. Lies and projections, lies and projections, lies and projections. It's not actually a true reflection of who you are or what your physical form actually is, right? Now, the second part of this, I would say, is radical practices of intimacy and self-love. I mean that with yourself, like being intimate, in an intimate, loving relationship with yourself and your physical form. That's much deeper work. That's much more, that work is just way more emotional in nature, and that requires like a lot of time and practice and strategies. But I'm not going to go into all of that just because that's more of like figuring out where you are and what the right next step would be for you, right? That's more involved work. But definitely view like the fat comments. What, fat at 10? Do you know how many fat kids turned out to be hot? I mean, if you consider humor to be helpful, you can also add an element of play to it. I think that actually helps neutralize it, like how absurd the comments are. Like some of the shit, I know that my family has said some horrible stuff to me, and sometimes I just have to laugh at the madness. Like, I cannot believe you would actually say that to a child. You're really that fucked up? My God, that says so much more about you than it does me. So sometimes that can be helpful as well. So, I mean, there's a million strategies that you can use with this, but those are a few that I would start playing with. And then again, it's like I would still go back into doing things that challenge yourself, right? So that you can break out of that programming. That's literally all it is. It's just programming. Here's a comment that just says, I hope you have a great day. And thank you so much. I hope you have a great day too. Okay. Is being way too confident egocentric? So that is a definite no from me, only because I view those two things as being different in a number of ways. So Egocentrism is more of like the childlike structure in which you are the center of the universe. And that's very important for childhood development because it helps you become self-aware. Like if you're able to see yourself and care for yourself and, consider yourself to be the center of the universe, that's actually an important part of development. It's just that we shed it more and more as adults. But having confidence in your ability to do something and your trust that you're making the right moves and that you're capable, that's not the same thing as thinking you're the center of the universe, right? That's more in alignment with narcissism in the sense that it's like all roads lead to Rome. So egocentrism is this idea that everyone is thinking about you and talking about you and focusing on you, and you are the center of the world. And some people do really struggle with this, but a lot of the time, those are actually people who have low confidence and low self-esteem, ironically enough. If you think that everyone is focusing on what you're doing and what you're talking about and how you're being and what choices you're making, that could come from you having helicopter parents. Again, that's something, if you have parents that don't give you opportunities to build confidence in yourself and they hover over you a lot and they over provide, that's something that will extend the egocentrism window, but will actually stunt confidence more so, or at least that's a trend that I see a lot. The funny thing is that, and this is almost, I'm on the opposite extreme end of that spectrum in some weird ways, where I can like make a scene in a restaurant or do something really out of control and think that nobody's looking at me, think that I'm being completely ignored by everyone in the room. That's the complete opposite of egocentrism, right? Because I don't think anyone is focusing on me. And so that's just a different concept altogether. Now, if confidence extends into the area of, I know what's best, I absolutely know what's right, and there's no way that you can change my mind, and you're a fool if you think otherwise, then you're bleeding into arrogance, then you're getting egotistical, right? Then it just kind of gets out of control. And same thing, I've also been in that camp many times. If you ask any of the men that I've dated, the one complaint they will tell you is that I'm arrogant. And yes, as a matter of fact, one did call me egotistical. Which, I mean, I probably deserved, but I also still think I was right in that moment. So I don't know how much that tells you, but whatever. So it's kind of like, yes, there's a spectrum, but I think egocentrism is more of the childhood experience that we're supposed to evolve out of, but that's not always the case depending on how you grew up and whether or not the self was still the focus of the universe, if you developed any narcissistic traits, or if you just were hovered over in such extreme ways that you ended up never shedding that part of yourself, or it had a harder time getting, dismantling over time. Okay, this one is advice for speaking in front of groups. I think this means feel. I often feel like I'm out of my body at first. Okay, so I would definitely practice rehearsing. When you're rehearsing the speech or talking in front of people, kind of imagine what would it feel like if you were really, really confident, really in your power, really in your element. What would that feel like? How would you step onto the stage? How would you be communicating? What would you be doing with your hands? What would your heart rate feel like? I mean, really dig into all of the physiological experiences that come up with public speaking. So I would really do a lot of prep work more than anything else. And then I would, in order to prepare, I would also probably meditate. I would do a lot of breath work beforehand. So I would try to get my nervous system as chilled out as possible before speaking. And also a really interesting thing that I think you might find useful, at least, to kind of separate yourself from the nerves is a lot of the time when we were last like speaking in front of groups. So if you think about our evolution and our primal brains, when we used to have to speak in front of groups, it was actually because we were on trial and we were trying to basically defend our lives to a group of people, right? That's not true for everybody, especially with all of the archetypes and stuff, but a lot of people have a lot of fears around that, and it makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. So you can think about that too, like, oh, this is just the primitive brain, which is how you can kind of separate yourself from it. Your life isn't actually on the line. It's just that your brain thinks it is, and so you want to calm the nervous system down as much as you can. All right, the next question: how to gain the confidence that whatever we are dreaming to achieve is going to manifest. Now, I'll just tell you what I do, and this does require some balanced thinking, right? So I know where I'm aiming. I know what the desire that I have in my heart in this moment is. However, I also understand that there could at some point be divine intervention that's needed in order to keep me on track, right? So that has happened. I'm sure you guys heard the story in a previous episode about I'm sorry if you can hear my cat. I wanted to go get my MBA, and then I was in this car accident with this forklift, and my whole trajectory of my career changed as a result of that. So it's kind of like, it's okay if those modifications need to happen. It's not a matter of, I wasn't able to manifest the desire. It's just that things shifted to keep me on track in this lifetime. And my satisfaction level is probably much, much higher than it would have been had I gone and gotten into an MBA program. So you have to trust that your fulfillment is something that is going to manifest no matter what. So the best thing that you can do is focus on the feelings, and then know that the actual result is just a side effect of the desired feeling or the desired experience that's there. Now, the other thing is I view my relationship with God, universe, divine source as co-creative. So I don't have to overly exert my will in this lifetime. I know that it's like, okay, I'm getting the messages, I'm getting the information, I'm getting told what to do, right? From God, you could say, right? All of my inspiration, all of the things that I'm pursuing, all of it is in the service of me fulfilling my full potential, which is what ultimately God wants for me. So we're in agreement on all of that stuff. I know where I'm aiming. I know where I'm going. This is a co-creative experience. I can say, hey, God, I want this thing. How do I make it happen? And then so long as I am showing up and listening to my intuition and taking the actions that I'm being called to take, so long as I'm doing all of those things, I'm not going to go wrong. I'm not going to make a wrong move. I'm not going to turn down some crazy wild path that is completely out of alignment. No. I view this as just a constantly evolving and unfolding journey of different layers and different experiences and different pieces of wisdom that I carry throughout my life, and then I'll eventually carry up into the astral. So I kind of take the pressure off of the manifestation itself. I just have to keep moving in the direction that I'm being guided, and then everything else can just kind of fall into place. It's not a matter of, you could say I was really focused on manifesting getting into an MBA program. It ultimately wasn't right for me, but it didn't really matter. I just needed to focus on getting into the MBA program, and God did the rest. So you can view it as being that as well. It's kind of like, just aim where you need to aim and don't worry about the rest. Just take the action that you need to take, listen to your intuition, go with what you feel is right, make those moves, and everything else is just going to put you where you need to be. So I actually come from the standpoint of I'm going where I need to. my only job is to listen to the action that I'm intuitively being called to take, doing that stuff, and then everything else is gravy. You know, that's kind of my process with it. So as far as developing confidence in your ability to manifest, I just think it requires like one or two good things manifesting, like one or two really clear things that you manifest. And then honestly, after that, you can be confident in all of the other stuff that you're creating or that you're asking for. So I think it's like, if you've been specific about, you know, one or two things and seen them come through, you know, that's where I would start if you haven't already done that. But once you've done it a couple times, you can recreate it again and again and again. You can absolutely do it more. So that's my strategy. That's my approach. Just don't put too much pressure on like the actual thing. Just trust that you're aiming at the right thing. And if you need to make a change, you know, God is not going to let you ignore it. I promise you that. Okay, this one is how to teach it to my children. So I already spoke about this briefly, but what I will say is, don't be a helicopter parent, because they need to fail. They need to try things they suck at. They need to be given opportunities to do challenging and difficult things so that they can actually develop confidence within themselves. So remember, it's not something you can teach. You can support them in their self-esteem and making them feel good about themselves in the right ways, but you need to let them face challenges. You kind of have to let them fight their own dragons, and that's what helps them build confidence. When they actually do something hard and then get the reward of feeling like they've achieved something hard, that is really where confidence comes into play. So I would say your job is to give them space, right? In terms of, I'm saying your job in terms of helping them develop confidence. Let them, you know, have space to try challenging things. And then when they try and they, you know, they might fail, they might succeed, but give them credit for the attempt, because you don't want them to stop making attempts. You want them to keep attempting things. You want them to keep trying. You want them to keep doing stuff. So that is the main thing that you want to emphasize, is just give them credit for the attempt. But also don't blow smoke. Don't give 8th place trophies. Do not do that. That is not, I really don't agree with that, because they have to experience failure as well. So you don't want to bullshit them, because that's also not going to be good. That's going to create false self-esteem. And, you know, they need to know and be able to assess, do I suck at this or am I good at this? And success and failure are the best ways to evaluate within yourself whether or not you're good at it or you suck at it. The only thing is, if they suck at it, they can try again or they can move on to something else. So you don't want to give them a false sense of security. So let them fail, and also encourage them to fail. Let them feel okay with failing, and help them develop a better relationship with things not going their way and things, you know, not going buttery smooth when they make an attempt. And I think that's probably the best thing you can do to develop their confidence, because if they're solid with failure, if they are really pumped up about trying new things that are challenging and they know what it's like to do tough shit, they're going to keep doing that throughout their entire lives. So that's what I would say. Also, I think it's fair to say, and you could view this as good or bad. Remember, I'm not a parent, but that also makes me really, really neutral. So just keep in mind, if you don't want to take that insight from me, because I don't have kids, totally get it. But at the same time, I'm really neutral. I just work with a lot of people. So that's just wanted to give that disclaimer to you. All right, everybody, that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening to me blabber on about confidence. I hope you found this helpful, and If you need some extra healing support, if you would like to get a reading from me, go to onyxhealing.com and all of your dreams will come true. I'm just kidding. Pretty close though. So that is all that I have, and I am sending you so much love, so much support, so much confidence, more than you can even handle. And let this just be a reminder to go do something challenging, start something new, start a new hobby, go, commit to trying a new exercise or program that you really feel like you would enjoy doing, because it will legitimately boost your confidence. It just will. Doing hard shit will boost your confidence. So go do something challenging, even if you fail, and you will thank me later. Have a good one. Bye.